Hey everybody, it's Ted with The Ted Show. Happy Tuesday. Today's Tuesday, June 19th. I am honored to have Charles Foreman with me. Charles has, if you looked at his bio that I posted, has had the most amazing history. He looks so good. Hey Tom, let us know you can hear us or see us. See how they pop up? This is his first Facebook Live, so we'll be going back and forth and talking. But he's got such an amazing history. Hey, Gert. And Dominique Lombardo is here, and I was going to say Madam Butterfly, but Madam Butterfly. Dominique introduced me to Charles, and he's just got such a great story. So we got some thumbs up, Charles, so we can get to it. So see how easy that is? We're just looking into the camera, and everybody's really staring either at my forehead or the jacket, and you're metal, so you're golden. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Ted, for inviting me, and thank Dominique. And you need to thank one of those folks that usually never gets any thanks is my caregiver, Mrs. Daisy Krzanek.
Mrs. Daisy's here.
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Yes, without my caregiver, I wouldn't be here.
Tell them, even though it's in the bio, tell them how old you are.
Tell them how old I am?
Yeah, because I just can't believe it.
Tell you what the computer says or tell you what?
You can tell me both.
Okay. The computer, which you, as you know, sometimes gets numbers turned around. The computer says I'm 94. But if you ask me, I would say 49.
I love it.
I think the computer gets things a
You
little mixed
look
up.
amazing, though, truly. I'm not just saying that. I mean, I would have never guessed at all.
Well, see, at least
It's all good living?
Now it's good living, and that's the truth.
I love it. All right, so give us a little background on you. They've read the bio, but it's always good to hear it from the horse's mouth, the person who actually lived through it. So tell them a little bit about you, how you started out in this world.
Okay. I was born in the city of Wilmington, Delaware, which is a little city about 1,000 miles north of here. I come from an ordinary family. In that period of time, blacks were very poor, and in my neighborhood, we had some Italian families. So the race thing wasn't as bad there as it was in some places. In fact, I learned more about the race problem as I grew up and went to school and got older. I went to a small four-room school, grade school, when I grew up, and from there I went to junior high and high school about 15 miles away. And in order to get that school, we had to either ride a bus. The state school system supplied a bus, or you had to ride a trolley car and pay for it. Now, myself and a few other boys, we collected the money for riding the trolley car, but we hitchhiked or else rode our bicycles.
Why not have a feeling you had that kind of spirit? I love it.
The school was I think it was about 10 miles, so we figured that if we rode our bikes to school, we could save the money. Because everybody, including me, we were very poor at that time, and the fare that the state furnished obviously was the bottom of the ring, and I think it was about 8 cents one way, and 8 cents the other way. I think it was about 16 cents a day.
You pocketed it and hitchhiked.
Yeah, we did hitchhike, yes.
How many of you were there?
It was about 3 of us that hung together, and we did hitchhike because we were fortunate enough to get in contact with a man who worked in the city of Wilmington. We were on the outskirts of the city, and he worked downtown, and he was also the janitor at our four-room school. So he was aware of us, and he saw us hitchhiking, so he told us he was going downtown, so he would just give us a ride. Nice. So we took advantage of that.
Very nice.
So when he didn't give us a ride, we rode our bikes. We rode the bikes most of the time, and good weather, bad weather, whatever the case might be.
Very entrepreneurial of you, Charles.
Yes.
At a young age.
Yes. So,
And then you joined you went into service. You served in World War II.
right. So in December of 1941, when the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor, that's when the war started. I think, I believe Mr. Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, was in office, and he said the country of Japan had struck us and we were at war. So we want every able-bodied person to come out and fight for the country. There were many signs around asking people to join, and at the same time, people weren't joining fast enough, so they introduced what is known as a draft.
Right.
And they started drafting people. And we were among the age to be drafted when you're right out of high school, and if you didn't have some type of job like a doctor or nurse or something like that, you're eligible to be drafted. In other words, you were not in any type of necessary job. Well, some of the boys in our age group, they got drafted pretty quickly. I was one of the ones. They didn't draft me pretty quickly, but I was afraid I was going to get drafted anyhow. And not being a person who liked to be drafted or in anything or told what I had to do.
Here it comes again. You enlisted, I bet.
Yes, I decided to enlist, and I looked at the branches of service, the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. I didn't look too much at the Marine Corps, but I looked at the Army and the Navy because that's where most people were going. However, some of the people who had been drafted, I also found out how they were being treated, which I would say wasn't very nice. And looking at some of the invitations to join, I saw one for the Marine Corps where they offered training and so forth so that you could be a pilot. And I always wanted to be a pilot. I thought it was good. And at the time, I didn't know that the Marine Corps was not accepting blacks in any part of the Marine Corps. I just didn't know it. And so the Marine Corps, you had to join the Marine Corps to get into the air wing. So I decided, well, let me do what I can to get into the air wing. So when I went to enlist, I had to go to Philadelphia, which was 38 miles away, to a recruiting office. And I told them that I wanted to enlist, but I wanted to get in the air wing. Reluctantly, they welcomed me, but they told me I had to get in the Marine Corps, join the regular Marine Corps, go through Marine training, and when I went through that, I could go ahead and get assigned to the air wing.
So you did get accepted. That's where you served. You got accepted, even though at the time they weren't allowing blacks in.
Yes.
That's amazing.
But what I didn't know at the time was the recruiting office, I would say, was between a rock and a hard place. They were being told to bring men in, but as far as the Marine Corps was concerned, they were told, don't bring any in.
Wow.
No blacks, do not bring any blacks in. We don't want them. For whatever else reason they were telling, we're told that on one hand. On the other hand, we're told to raise our numbers for enlisting people. So whoever the person was, the enlistment person was that was talking to me, he told me, well, he didn't say any of what I just said. He just told me, yes, we'll be glad to enlist you. You have the right age, at least I had the right age according to what I told him.
Right. That's right, because you probably weren't quite 18, right?
That's right.
Yes, my father-in-law did the same thing. He
Right.
pretended he had a birth date.
And I had just graduated from high school, so I told him I just graduated from high school, and somehow we agreed on the age.
They did that a lot back then, right?
That's
Because they
correct.
wanted.
That's correct.
Back then, it was a different. To me, it feels like people really just ran out and were trying to sign up. It was different.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I went through taking all the tests, and you had to go to a dentist and get a report from the dentist that your teeth were okay, and you had to go to an eye doctor to see if you had 20/20 vision. But there was one test that there was a little bit odd, and that test was an IQ test. Now that's where I took the IQ test, and as I remember, I made 100 and something. And I knew that prior to that, I had spent a couple months at a youth camp, and I took an IQ test there, and I knew it was pretty high. So when I went to the Marine Corps, I knew I had, or thought I had a good high IQ. So we went through that, and we went through all the other things to get enlisted. Now I'm going to come back to that IQ a little bit further.
Okay. It's your show. You're directing it, my friend. A little bit
something happened about that IQ test that I didn't know at the time. In fact, I didn't find it out until here in recent years. So I passed all the tests to go and so forth, and they told me that I would have to go to recruit training, which at that time was in North Carolina, at least for the blacks. There's a special camp. We had.
So you had separate camps. I did not know that.
Absolutely.
Wow. So you trained completely separately.
Separate, but they were not equal. Well, at any rate, when they told me that I would get papers telling me where to go and so forth within a month. Well, the papers did come, and I had a one-way train ticket to Jacksonville, North Carolina. And we were told that's where we were to go to camp. But.
I'm waiting for the but. Here we go.
We went there, and I got the train like everybody else. And when I got on a train, there were a lot of other young black men, and we were ushered into one car. The conductor somehow pushed us all into one car. These were men from New York, Pennsylvania, etc., in the Northeast. So up to that time, I was pretty dumb. I didn't understand it, but we all got to talk, and we come to find out we were all going to the same place. So we talked, and a lot of trash talk and so forth, till we got there, and then we all got off the train. We started looking at each other. What are we supposed to do now? Nobody knew. But we stood at the railroad station not too long, and after a while a truck drove up, and a couple of uniformed Marines drove up, and they asked the question, "Where are you people going?" That was his question. Where are you people going? We kind of looked at each other to see trying to figure out what he meant by you people. But it didn't take us too long to figure out what he meant. So we told him that we were supposed to be going to the Marine Corps station there. And they had a name for it. I believe it was Sheridan Island. No, they had a name for it, but it wasn't Montford Point. That's not the name he gave us. It was another name. I'll think of it. I'll tell you what it was. But at any rate, he said, well, this is your transportation to your recruiting camp. That's what it was, a recruiting camp. And it was a truck. And we had no thought that we'd be riding in the back of a truck. So they told us in a very nice way to get in that truck. And we were all young and dumb. So we climbed into the truck, and then they took us out in what we thought was the woods. And as the further we got, our spirits got a little bit lower each time, because all we could see was trees and dirt roads. Finally, we got there, and they told us to get out, and all of you stand in line. Stand in, I believe it was a double line. And then they announced to us that we were at our new home. That was going to be our new home for quite a few weeks. And So this was Montford Point, the training camp for Black Marines.
Wow.
And then we saw these pasteboard huts. And I mean, they were pasteboard huts. Actually, some type of pasteboard. And that was going to be our living quarters. Of course, most of those fellows were not too happy about that. And some of them started mumbling and grumbling about, man, I'm going home. I'm going back home. And as I said, we were all poor. And there wasn't $10 hardly between any of us.
Right.
So there was no money to go back. And of course, we were told in no uncertain terms, you're not going anywhere. So if you think you're going, forget it. And so they told us that, well, let us tell you what you're going to be doing. One of the things you're going to be doing, you're going to be getting new haircuts, and you're going to be issued your gear. Well, they took us or directed us to the barbershop, and the new haircuts was everybody had the same one, which was bald heads.
Wow.
Of course, many of the guys, or a number of the guys, didn't like it because they had pretty hair, but that pretty hair disappeared.
Yeah.
After the barbers got through with us. Then we were told that we were going to be told where our new homes were, which were the huts. And they counted us the numbers, and they'd take, I believe it was about 12 men. And they'd say, take 12 men and point to a hut, okay, this is going to be your new home.
How big were the huts?
Well, the huts would house, I believe it was about 12 men with double bunks. And the huts set on the ground. And I believe that they did have wooden floors in them. Yes, they did have wooden floors. So each hut had about, I think it was 12 bunks. And that was going to be our home for quite some time.
What was your gut feeling at that moment? What were you feeling? Homesick? Were you feeling, oh my God, I made the wrong decision?
That's right. A lot of us did. But we also realized that was going to be home, no matter what we thought. And then these fellows that came to pick us up and so forth, they were what they call DIs. DI means drill instructors. And they were rough and tough as you want to find. However, some of the guys felt that they were tough on us because we were black. Now, the interesting thing about that was, we think, and I think we were right, that they were doing it because we were black and they were white, and could vent some of their bitterness against us. But the irony of it, it was an advantage in the long run, because it was drilling in us that to be in the Marine Corps, you were going to have to be rough and you were going to have to be tough, because you would not be able to take the training and you would not become Marines.
Well, not only as a Marine, but as a black Marine, right?
Yes.
There's an added level of toughness that you have to have because you're obviously being treated differently.
That's right. So at any rate, we got our haircuts and we were sent to what would be like a warehouse, and we were issued our gear, which consisted of 2 sets of dungarees, 2 sets of underwear, I believe it was 2 blankets, shoes. They were uniforms. And these uniforms, as I said, were dungarees, green dungarees. And so the question came up, what did we do with our clothes we brought with us? Now, most of us had just ordinary clothes. Now, 1 or 2 of the guys had respectable suits, shirts and ties, nice shoes. They were told, forget them. And of course, they were not happy about that. This good suit, new suit I just got, I just graduated from school. My mama paid all this money for it. I'm not going to get rid of my suit. I said, well, you can do what you want with it, but you won't use it here.
Right.
The uniform of the day will be what we're giving you, dungarees. So that was resolved.
And Montford is the medal you're wearing. And I don't want to interrupt you, but I know people have been asking on the show what the medal is.
The medal
that he's wearing around his neck?
Okay, the medal, it was a long story to that.
You keep going. I've seen a lot of people ask.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They ask, by the way, everybody has said, thank you for your service. What an amazing story you're telling. I mean, lots of love you're getting.
Thank you. The medal, I'll get to it just a little bit.
Take your
down.
time.
Now, anyhow, we went through training camp. It was the usual training, hiking, all types of things. And we went to what they call a rifle range, learned how to shoot. And we had rifles, and we learned how to shoot, and we were taught the rifle is your only and best friend, so take care of it, because it's going to have to take care of you. Just remember that. And we had to clean our weapons regularly and so forth. Then we had inspections where the drill instructors would inspect them. Now, during our training period, one of the things we had to do was a lot of physical stuff. We had to run with 100-pound box of ammunition, bullets. We had, I think it was running about 100 yards with a box of ammunition on the shoulder. You had to run 100 yards, I believe, and run back with it. But at any rate, we had to run with a 100-pound box of ammunition. A lot of people didn't like that, of course, but they did it. They had to.
Do you think that was across the board? It didn't, like at the other camp that was not Montfort, were they doing the same similar kind of exercises?
They were doing something similar, but they might not have had 100-pound boxes. They might have had 25 or 50-pound boxes. But we didn't know that.
Sure.
And we were told that. So we did what we were told. In fact, that's what we did anyhow, no matter what it was. We did what we were told. That was made very clear to us that we're the drill instructors, and you don't tell us what you do or what you're going to do. You will do what you're told to do. We were told that in no uncertain terms.
So Madam Butterfly wants you to talk about the medal. I love her very much.
Well,
everybody's asking about it. That's why.
Okay.
People want you to
At any
talk
rate,
about that medal.
After we got through the training camp, and moved on to various things, at the end of the road, we got engaged in the war in the Pacific. And when we came back from the war in the Pacific, we all, at times, some of us went back to our homes to continue our lives. Some of the guys stayed in the service. And after, I believe it was, how many years? 30, 40, 60, yeah.
Years.
After 60 years, well, those of us who entered the service in 1942, between 42 and 44, were awarded the Congressional Medal. That's what this gold medal is a Congressional Gold Medal, because we were given this gold medal because we had to fight so hard to get into the service. We had to fight our country to get our country to pass the legislation to let us enter the service.
Wow.
When I entered the service, and a number of others, there's a few, it was probably maybe 2,000 of us first Black Marines. And we were given the Congressional Medal for the fight that we had to go through.
What an amazing honor. What an amazing amount of service and what you went through.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always so thankful for anybody who serves our country, but this medal is representative of a completely different challenge and struggle you had to go.
Yeah, I haven't, it's a lot that I haven't told you, but that's why we have the gold medal, basically for what we went through. And before we were awarded the gold medal, the gold medal was awarded by the Congress, and they had to pass the legislation, and each congressman and senator had to sign for us to get this medal.
Was it an emotional time when you got the medal? Was it kind of like you're finally being recognized for the unique challenges that you all went through?
Yes, it was. We all had to go to Washington, D.C., where the president was supposed to give the medal out. I mean, he was supposed to hang the medal on you. Now, the number of people that got the medal was probably around 500 people. And when we were on the Marine headquarters on their parade field, that's where we got it. It was one of those real hot summer days, and it wasn't very nice being out there, but they were given out. But it was so many that it would have been difficult for the president to give each person one of these medals.
Sure.
So they arranged for the president had a general designated, and they were dispersed so that they could all be dispersed to those of us who were gathered there. Everybody did not get it, but the first Marines, that's what it was for the first Marines, and was roughly 1,200, I believe, no, it was more than 1,200, about 2,000 of us, I guess, that were the first ones, and I'm one of the few that's left.
Wow.
Most of them have moved on.
Do you keep in touch with them? Is there a group?
Yes, there was the Montford Point Marine Association that was organized about 1946, 1947, and it's made up of chapters across the country. There's probably 20-some chapters across the country, and they meet once a year. But the original Montford Point Marines were, I guess you'd say, like blue bloods.
Of course.
We consider ourselves important. We're not, but we consider ourselves important.
You
we
paved
fought
the way,
fight.
though. You fought the fight. Yeah, you
That's
paved
right.
the way.
We did.
You paved the way, and you also got involved after the war. You've never given up the fight, and you can read that in your bio, which I love.
That's right.
So you went on. You put it in your bio. You talk about you got married. You had children. I believe one of your daughters became a judge. No,
Right.
Yes. Okay. So, and then the other daughter became. You listed it out. Your bio was amazing, by the way. I don't know who wrote it, if you wrote it or you all wrote it, but it was really, really good.
Thank you.
But you continued to fight the good fight. So
Yes.
what was as you get out, you go into civilian life. You're posed with some more interesting challenges.
Right.
And you continue the fight, though. You don't back down. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, one of the big fights I had when I got out of the service, got married, had children, and so forth, you had to find some place to live. And like everybody else, I saw advertisements for housing and everything, and I didn't realize that I just had to still keep fighting.
Right.
So I went to try to get a house, and I learned that wherever I was trying to get one,
And that's because you're black.
Right.
So it was back before the time of where all the legislation changed.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we were going through all that.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
you were trying to. There was housing for black people and minorities, but you were going to live in a predominantly white
Mixed
neighborhood,
area, yes.
Mixed area.
There was a very big fight for it. Blacks just did not even attempt to get in housing in certain
Yeah,
areas.
but you did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell that story, because you did, and then that led to you continuing to fight the fight.
Right. Well, I tried to get at first, that's when I learned that I couldn't get a home in a type of neighborhood I wanted because it's black. Blacks, that was just off limits.
Right.
And then I tried to find out, what to do about it. And I learned that the only way you're going to be able to do anything about it is you're going to have to get in a position where blacks, you're going to have to get in a position where you can control the sale of housing.
I love this thought process.
And
awesome.
the only way you could have anything to do with that would you had to get to be one of the gatekeepers, like the realtors.
Right.
And to be a gatekeeper, you had to have a real estate license. And then to have a real estate license, you had to go to school, pass a test. Then you could apply for license. Well, to go to school, the school that you had to go to get the educational qualifications, they didn't admit blacks, period.
What around what year is this? Is this 50s, early 60s? Is this? Because it's just it's so foreign to someone like me who I'm not old enough to remember the true struggle. I was born in 1964. So
you're a baby.
Thank you. You're probably the only person that ever says that to me. But there was such a struggle, and we forget. It's not been that long, but we really do forget in our country. And so I can't believe for you to say that you couldn't get a real estate license or it was difficult for you to get one because you're black. It's just such a foreign thing, I think, even for me and for anybody who's watching. But you really did have to go through it. You had to continue to push through.
Right. Well, I attempted to get into school that gave the where you took the class to get the license, and the president of the school told me that he told me point blank that a lot of our students are from West Virginia and from the South, and their parents would withdraw their students if they found out that we were taking blacks into school.
It's just insane.
So we're sorry, but we can't.
So how did you overcome that? Because you pushed through no matter what, which I love. So what did you do to get past that, like you did with the whole Marine
Well,
Corps?
at that time, I knew who the governor of the state was because I asked somebody how to break through that, and they said you're going to have to get the school to open up or do something like that. And if the school wasn't going to open up because it was a private school, it wasn't a state-run school; it was a private school. So the state was not responsible. So I talked to the governor about it, and that's what he told me. The school was a private school, and they couldn't do nothing about it. And he said, I said, you'll have to talk to the real estate commissioner. Maybe he can tell you what to do. So I talked to the real estate commissioner, who was a real nice guy, and he said, well, I can understand your dilemma. And he said, the only thing I know to do is, he said, I'm willing to give you private tutoring. If
Wow.
you're willing to take the time and do it, I'll give you private tutoring. And he lived in a neighborhood that I knew wasn't too far away, and so I went to his house at night for several nights to have him tutor me, to take the test, to get the license. So I did that, and I passed the test with flying.
So when you go in to take the exam, right? So was that a difficult time too? Or when you get your license, I don't know what it was like back then. Now we have tons of large companies. Did you become your own broker at that
Yes.
moment? Okay, so I was going to say, how was that?
I had to get a salesman license first.
Oh.
So I had to get a salesman's license first.
Gotcha.
And so when I got the salesman's license, then I moved on to get a broker's license.
Sure. Because you had to set your own path. Nobody was going to take you in their office.
That's initially, that's right. That's right. But anyhow, I got it and moved on. There was one thing that I always found. Well, this is one of the things I learned in the Marine Corps: find a way or make one.
Well, you certainly lived by that.
Yeah.
All right, but that led to more. So you didn't just stop there. You didn't just get your realtor license, your broker's license. You decided you wanted to be, or somehow you got called to be part of a bigger picture of changing
Yes.
the whole country.
That's right.
So tell us about that.
I did that for a few years, and there was a group located in Washington. It was the National Committee Against Discrimination in Housing. And as I moved along and try to work at it, I learned of them, and we communicated back and forth. And so they knew about me and my fight to try to do something, but I was getting experience of how to get around to do things. And one of the things that I learned and utilized was that during that period of time, there were people losing homes that were being foreclosed on, homes that had FHA and VA mortgages on them. Well, they couldn't be discriminated in the sale of them. So
You figure out the way, Charles.
that's right. They were located in different parts of the city and county, and so when they were on the market, I reached for them as quickly and
Wow.
as fast as I could and got sales for them. So that spread out, blacks moving in various parts. And that was how I broke that circle around our city, but I also got the experience. And so there was a time, of course, we had redlining.
Right.
That was getting
I'm
fun.
not so sure we don't still have a little bit of that, which is so frustrating and aggravating.
But at any rate.
But you took it further. You helped create, or you were part of the process of
Right.
changing the national law.
Right, because the National Committee was working on getting a law or something passed. And they did not have, when they were working on it, they did not have the actual experience as somebody who's worked at it on a daily basis, whose bread and butter and life depended on it. And so that's where I came into the picture.
And then the laws changed because of all your work and, of course, a giant slew of people's work.
That's right.
And then, have you found? I think we're going to have to do like 3 shows. Have you? Because it's fascinating. I want to get more of the history. I want to continue to allow you to tell your story because I think a whole bunch of people said legacy, and what you're telling is a part of history that I don't think we get to hear that often. It's such a blessing to be able to hear it, and I want to hear more. So I want to give a little bit of kudos to you, a lot of kudos to you for paving that way. I mean, do you feel like you were a path paver? What is the word? You were a influencer, a trendsetter. Do you feel like that now looking back?
When I look back at it, I didn't think about it at the time. But now when I look back, if I had to do this or had to do that, this wouldn't have happened. Because when the legislation was written, I was part of I never gave the speeches in front of Congress now, let me clear that up. I didn't do that. But the people who gave the speeches to Congress, I helped do the work to write their speeches.
Wow.
But I didn't speak in front of Congress, no.
But you're part of that process. I mean, that is historically, that's such a big movement. It changed the way that we trailblazer. Thank you, London. I love that. That's I was having a problem with the word trailblazer because I think that there are so many of you that we don't get to hear the story about, and we sort of know the struggle. I mean, we all know that there was an incredible amount of discrimination prior to the passing of the law in the 60s. Still is. I understand that, but it was incredibly crazy back then. And the fact that you were able to stay strong, do you attribute that? Because I don't want to close out the show without you getting to talk about your IQ, because you told me you were going to come back to that. But do you attribute that to your IQ? Do you attribute that to your parents? What do you attribute that kind of strength? Because not everybody who's in your position did what you did.
Well, it was just, as I said, I just at the time was taught in the Marine Corps, if you want to do the job, find a way or make one. Now the other thing, I had 2 daughters, and I was determined that they were going to do better in school. So my Bill's daughter, was the first one to go to an all-way school. It was in Arden, Delaware. And they were not going to let her in initially, but the word got around.
I was going to say, they didn't know who they were messing with
right.
at that moment.
And when it come time for her to go to school, the principal called her mother and told her to bring her to school. She was told that in order for her to go to, was it the 1st grade, she would have to ride a taxi. The state would pay for a taxi to come to the house to pick her up in the morning to go to school and bring her home. And I said, no,
Remind me never to be on that side of you, by the way.
that's not going to happen. And
how did your daughters grow up? Because obviously you, again, trailblazer is a great word. You're pushing through. Did your daughters learn the same thing? Were they both had that kind of strength and understood and kind of watched you? Because I think obviously your family has to watch what you're doing, and so you grow up in an atmosphere where you don't take no for an answer.
both of them were, but the one that was a judge She was a tough one.
Was she?
Yeah. She grew up to be a judge, and she was the first black female judge in Polk County. And
Polk County here?
yes, in here. Yeah.
Wow.
Polk County here, and
Nothing against Polk County, but that's pretty big even now.
but I would not have wanted to do anything wrong and have to go in front of her.
Even Dad does it. Boy, if Dad's scared of something, watch out.
Because she never talked about what happened on the bench, but I remember at one time I don't know how it came up, but we were just talking, and she was talking about these guys that have all these babies and don't want to take care of them. And sometimes those cases would come in front of her of, what's that, child support. And she would tell some of those guys, you're going to go out of here, I'm let you out of here, you better get a job and pay your child support, because I don't want to see you again. Because if you don't, if I have to see you again, I'm going to see that you get another job.
Are y'all wondering where she got it from? Can't imagine.
But that was one of the things she would do, and so.
That's awesome. All right, so we're obviously going to have to do a part 2. Go ahead, Dominique asks.
She would like to say something about his medal.
Please say something about the medal.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to say that the original medal that they made is in the Smithsonian
Oh, how cool is that?
Museum in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And they do have an exhibit for the Montford Point
Oh
Marines,
my God,
and
that's
where
amazing.
the original medal.
Wow.
Which I think the cost of it was like $40,000
Wow.
to create the artwork for it. And
How does that feel to have a medal that you're wearing in the Smithsonian?
There's one little thing, if you can give me a couple minutes.
You
to
take
chat.
your time, my friend.
When I was in the Marine Corps, we had an incident that, well, you just won't hear this one. But it was very early in the days when we were at Montford Point Camp. We had a guy in there, he was from Alabama, and I think we used to call him Blue, Alabama Blue. Well, he was one of these guys who's always getting in trouble. When he'd go out of the camp, he's always getting beer or something, getting in trouble.
Oh.
Well, one weekend, I'm pretty sure it was on a Saturday, a Friday or Saturday, he had gotten in trouble and he was in jail in Jacksonville. So some of those New Yorkers and a few more of us got to talking, and the word was, you know what happens to a black man when he gets in jail. We have to get him out of there. And how are we going to get him out of there? And you know, the guys that get to talking, they get a few beers and get to talking, and said, there's no way those police are going to let him out. There's no way we're going to be able to talk him out. So somebody came up with the idea, we can break the jail down. We can get it out.
Again, I'm not surprised, but I'm entertained.
But so anyhow, we decided we'd break the jail down. And what we figured we would do, we were just starting tank training. We had a couple of tanks. They were 38 millimeter tanks. And so somebody had to drive a tank, and they had a truck, 2 pieces of equipment.
You
Well-
drove the tank?
That's what we had planned to do. That's what we,
Sorry. I don't mean to laugh. It's amazing. I mean, I'm not surprised, but it's amazing.
well, that's what we planned to do. We figured we'd knock the jail down and we could get him out. So some of the guys said, well, if we do that, we're going to get in a whole lot of trouble. But they only had about 5 policemen, 3 or 4 policemen in Jacksonville. So we didn't care about that.
Well, you had put up with a lot more than that, so I'm sure you weren't scared.
No, we weren't scared. So we also figured that we're on government property. They're not going to government property bother us. So we were kind of all hepped up to go to Jacksonville and get Blue out. As we were just kind of, getting ready to leave, because we had the truck, we had the tank, we saw a Jeep come out of the dark, because this was at night. It must have been on a Friday night, I think it was Friday night or Saturday, whatever it was. And this Jeep come flying out of the dark, and there was 2 people in the Jeep, and one of them was the commanding officer of the camp. His name was Colonel Sam Woods. And he was a nice guy. And he came, and guess what he was wearing? Back in those days, old men, wore white nightshirts. You know, the long
Yes.
white, yeah.
Yes.
He jumped out of the Jeep in his shirt and come wave his arms and started on, boys, don't do this, please don't do this. We looked at him, and he said, we said, well, we can't let Blue stay in there because you know, as we do, what's going to happen. And he said, look, don't do it, I'll take care of it. And he got back in his Jeep. And the driver of the Jeep, we think, and I'm sure we know, it was a fellow that lived in Daytona Beach. His name was Jim Huger. He was the colonel's driver. Because we couldn't figure out how the colonel knew about it.
Oh, yeah.
What we were doing. We couldn't figure that out. But
It was Jim all
Jim
along.
Huger. We figured it was Jim Huger. He told him what we were doing. So the colonel, he had Huger drive him down there to stop us. Well, he came down and Huger took him back to his quarters. Then he came back with his Jeep and he said, guys, don't do this because if you do it, they'll yank Colonel Woods away from here and we don't know where we'll be or what's going to happen. And to this, well, Jim Huger's dead now, but before his last days was, I asked him if he was the one who drove the Jeep. He said, I'm not going to say I was, I'm not going to say I was not. So that was one of the
Wait, did Blue live? What happened to Blue?
Blue got out.
Oh, we did get out.
Oh, yeah, he got,
Okay.
yeah, come Monday morning, he was in camp, laughing, smiling.
Oh, okay. So all that
Did
for
you
naught.
bust him out, or they got him out, or you busted him out?
We didn't have to bust him out. Somebody got him out. I don't know.
love it.
We don't know to this day
my God.
how he got out, but nothing happened.
I wasn't
to
sure
him.
where this story was going, but I knew it would be good.
So that's my story.
I love it. All right, so you've been an absolute joy to have on the show. We have to follow up. If you're willing, I'd love to have you on because you obviously have a whole lifetime of stories that I think it's important for people to hear. You see you can't see it from here, but there's lots of hearts going up and down and lots of likes, and people are sending you a ton of love. And I think that's because your story's authentic and people really do want to hear our history, some of it as painful as it is to hear your story, but that drive and determination, it's motivational for people, and I think it's awesome. See, Carlin just said the best show ever. Honestly, I love your story. So I want you to come back. I'd like to invite you back, and I appreciate you and everybody bringing you. Thank you guys so much for inviting him on. And do you have, like, if somebody wants to reach out to you, do you use email? Do you use social media?
Yeah, and I use email.
I'll
let
post
my
it.
caregiver tell you the email because you might
I'll
get
post
wrong.
it later if that's okay, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people who want to reach out to you, tell you how much they appreciate you, because you can't see all of this on Facebook. But it would be, I think people really would like to engage with you. You have such an amazing story. Thank you again for coming on,
Thank
my
you for
friend. I
having me.
appreciate you so much. Appreciate you, both you ladies. Love you guys so much. We'll be back in about a half hour. Thank you.